Hello and welcome to another Modswell video. I am your host Maxwell. Today I'm not going to be doing anything to do with the Dark Souls order, however I'm clearly playing on it during the start and the difficult sections, otherwise I'm taking some older footage that uses the mods I'm mentioning. There have actually already been tons of changes to the order, as asked for by you, the viewers. You'll find the list as I currently have it in either the description or in a pinned comment. I can see myself running out of description space today. Go over there and see if anything you've suggested has been put up or not. If not, suggest it again, I may have missed it or just forgotten. Seems like there's a lot of interest in this order, but that's not what this is about. Today I'm going to talk about a few different options you could take when it comes to combat in Skyrim. From orders like the one I'm on, which focuses on making everything a little bit more challenging, to setups that give you a fun, stress-free environment. We all play in different ways, and I'm not going to tell anyone their way in particular is right or wrong. If it's enjoyable to you, then that's what matters. I'm going to design an easy, medium and hard build in this video. I will leave timestamps so you can find precisely what you're after. Before all of that though, I'm going to start with something for everyone. Regardless of what you're building towards, I highly advise picking out a way to boost your character, but keep in mind that this can and will make aspects of the game easier. For example, perk overhauls like Valkyrie and Ordinator can make you very powerful, but not nearly as powerful as Valkyrie Max or Valkyrinator will. You have to pick the right boost to suit your desired challenge, but some good mods to check out if you're looking to make edits on your playable character's power are 20 or 50% more perk points, ESO Sky Shards, which are a collectible treasure hunt that grants you power based on how many you've found. There's truly absorbed dragon souls, which will take all of those dragon fights you've won and turn them into a huge pile of power. There are mods like Winter Sun, changes to the standing stones, and just new powerful gear. There are many more. And I mean, there are many more files for just the Dragon Souls mod. This is a very moldable part of the order, but I think it bears mentioning purely because a good set of buffs can definitely change your game's difficulty drastically. So if you're finding it too hard, maybe try boosting yourself before taking the game down a step. I also advise taking a look out there for animations that you find work right. Just because something looks cool, it doesn't always mean it's easy to use, and animations are definitely a part of combat. I wouldn't survive if it wasn't for my ultimate dodge mod, and more often than I'm proud of, a ring with borderline unlimited health. I will be covering animations very soon, but I do think that this is worth thinking about for right now. First up for the overhauls, I'm going to cover an easier setup to run. Do bear in mind this will still be somewhat a step up from vanilla. There really are plenty of options you could take here that simply just tweak the base game's AIs, damage numbers, and make simple quality of life changes to combat. Valraven Integrated Combat of Skyrim is a good example of a base to build from in this regard. Likely why there are already some bundles with this as a base, such as Valraven Combat and Archery Overhaul Bundle. Valraven features combat AI improvements, attribute regeneration edits, stamina use in combats, attacks of opportunity, realistic weapon reach, edits to kill move chances. By the way, leave violence under Valraven or it won't work right. We also get buffs to magic power when dual wielding, increased lethality with every level for both yourself and your enemies, and best of all, it does it without running a bunch of scripts in the background potentially causing input lag and other such issues. You'll get all of this for the low cost of 82.6 kilobytes, all whilst coming with that shiny Anasian mark of quality. Using the bundles mentioned earlier will cost a slightly higher 92.2 kilobytes, but comes attached with realistic AI detection, simply faster arrows and bolts, proper aiming, auto-equip best arrows, no BS AI projectile dodge, and visible favourite gear, as well as an edit to your ini settings to allow for maximum draw distance when it comes to NPCs. It's a really cool bundle, but I'd argue tacking on realistic AI detection is going to boost you into a slightly harder order. A different way to go would be better combat AI alongside mortal enemies and action-based projectiles. This setup is unarguably easier still when it comes to even Valraven alone, but there isn't much need to use it, unless you want to practice something like dodging and timings. The easy setup really is just choose a combat mod that doesn't include the deeper features that make the game more difficult, for example things like injuries. So we're going to move on to the medium level challenge. Here is where I usually try and sit, otherwise I simply don't enjoy shooting videos, it just becomes too much like hard work. The middle ground tends to have most, if not all, of the hallmarks of a very difficult build, but just tuned to be more friendly. For example, the first thing I do when picking mods for either a medium or hard combat setup is choose which leveled list I want to work with. For medium difficulty, I advise OW, which is my favourite option here, because it has a nicely balanced set of changes that increase the difficulty throughout the game, but only to a certain point. With OW, I still feel like the Dragonborn is one of the top players in the game, but they just have to work that little bit harder. OW features edits to the level multiplier, meaning whichever in-game difficulty you pick, the levels of the characters you face will be different. So playing at Novice to Legendary will actually feel different. On top of OW, we are also going to want to make the combat mechanics and AI feel different. Once again, there are multiple choices here. Vigor, Wildcat and Smilodon, just to mention a few. Vigor and Smilodon will suit this difficulty slightly better, whilst Wildcat can act as a slight improvement over the easier build. I would personally choose Vigor because it suits my playstyle the most. It features many of the same edits as Valraven, like improved combat AI, stamina-based actions, as well as fatigue and poise systems that work by giving you more power and durability whilst you have more stamina. Vigor is separated when it comes to the cherry on tops though, with injuries similar to Smilodon, which you or your opponent can get when they make a bad choice. They essentially act as a new disease that can be healed by using spells, potions or sleeping. Vigor also gives enemies access to potions, which I personally love, and clearly so have many other people, seeing as you can get that as a plugin for other combat mods now. So the enemy's combat is largely improved, but let's face it, NPCs in Skyrim are all manner of dumb, that even with better combat, it's hard to get exactly what you want. And here is where realistic AI detection comes in really nicely. For a medium build, realistic AI detection light is going to be more than enough to ensure NPCs don't walk right past you whilst you're just crouched. And if you pair it with search and destroy extended combat range, you'll have enemies spot you better and follow you for longer to ensure you're gone. This is just a nice slice of realism and somewhat removes your ability to just flee without thought. I'm also going to suggest you take a look at your lighting mods because realistic AI detection requires a lighting mod that works properly with it. Essentially, the mod is just saying, hey, you're in the light, everyone can see you, and then you get caught. This doesn't just mean dark builds, but ones that are flagged correctly by the mod. For example, I'm using Tenebrow right now alongside it, and the balance of being found and being able to hide is really perfect for me. And finally, it's time for the big one. I'm usually asked how to make the game more difficult, which I find kind of funny considering how I'm usually playing on an easier order at a lower difficulty or using massively unfair enchantments, so I can just get through the filming a bit easier. I mean, if I've had a drink the night before, I might even use all 3 of those. That being said, I do actually play on a pretty difficult order when I'm just playing for myself. When it comes to stepping up from medium to hard, there are a few ways you could go. Usually my first move is to start by editing the enemies because we are at a point where most of the other features are where you want them to be. That being said, switching from Vigor to the far less forgiving Fatality is a strong way to see your hair not attached to your head anymore. The differences in balancing side with the enemy a little heavier, but still gives you buffs through the right actions, so well-timed hits or having full stamina and health will let you go ham. Then, when that changes really quickly, you're going to have to back off. But wait, all of your health regeneration is lowered, and your potions now heal over time as opposed to instantly. And what's this? The injury you sustained isn't healed after you tried healing yourself. Why, I hear you ask? Well, Fatality is a cruel mistress, that's why. Injuries have to be healed with the appropriate bandage or curatives, making fixing your gammy slow leg a far more difficult and pressing matter. Fatality is also going to save you a few spots as it covers the AI detection and search radius, which are built into the mod. Your next move after installing Fatality is to go and find yourself something that makes the enemies much harder. I have a few favourites in this spot, such as SRCEO, also known as Skyrim Revamped Complete Enemy Overhaul. This mod is going to be adding perks, spells and balancing to all enemies. It's a fantastic mod, but it really isn't going to be compatible with a lot of what's already in this section, so I often use it as a bridge from medium to hard, but if I'm going for a really hard build, I don't. With that in mind, the actual change I advise on making is adding in Know Your Enemies all in one. This one is pretty obvious, right? It's going to be adding in strengths and weaknesses for enemies and their armor, as well as your own. You can have them as separate packs, but together they stack and create a really fun new mechanic in the game that also makes it so using the same weapons, armors and spells continuously is just not going to be a good strategy. Instead, you're going to have to discover what takes out the thing you're against. Luckily, shopkeepers tend to sell bestiaries to show you how to fight each foe, as well as examples on how to beat the armors. On top of this, I would also add on Morrowloot Ultimate. This is going to change up the loot list and remove any of the higher ranking gear, unless it makes sense for the game. Higher ranking enemies, for example, can still hold high level gear, which makes it more of a challenge to combat those foes. MLU also somewhat delevels encounter zones, but we can ignore that because we have something different in mind for that spot. We will get to that next. For now though, MLU also delevels the rewards you get from missions, meaning that whatever you pick up will essentially always come maxed out, which kind of makes you stronger, but it doesn't when you consider the enemies will have the same thing. The biggest issue for users of MLU is just the sheer scope of what it's trying to change. This is going to make it hard to fit into orders, but it happened to work perfectly in a build with Fatality, Kai itself, and my next mod, Skyrim Unleveled. This is one of my favourite mods of all time, and I rarely get a chance to play with it. Skyrim is a huge open world game that really just sets you off to explore. In the vanilla game you could pretty much head wherever you please without too many consequences. Unleveled will not stand for this. It does exactly what you expect it to. It removes the levels of enemies you're fighting and instead sets them to static base levels which far outstrip those Bethesda put in place. Try wandering too far out into an area with higher level requirements, you're just going to die. Unleveled also removes the skill based leveling, meaning equipment isn't going to improve with your abilities. The idea behind this is to create more emphasis on the perks you select and the build you make. Somehow an unleveling style mod is one of the best role playing ones too. Who knew? So for all that I've just said, there is another option. One big Omega bundle that will see you through all manner of difficult combat. It's called Not Your Father's Skyrim. Now I'm not going to cover this right now for one simple reason. I've already done a video on it, and this one's taking up some time already. But if you want a truly challenging time with only using one mod, then Not Your Father's Skyrim will work fantastically. I've heard people say this is maybe too hard though, so maybe I should have called that Omega Advanced version or something. I will leave a link to the mod and a link to the video I made on it for those who are curious. Before I end, I'm just going to be very clear. Do not copy the setups as I have them in the description. I've included multiple options that I think could help. The setups I wholly advise right now. For easy, go with Valraven. Either as the bundle or as a standalone file, and throw action-based projectiles and any mod that includes ultimate dodge mod on top of it. This is going to be great fun and not a horrific challenge. For those after the mid stage, the best picks for me would be open world loot, vigor, realistic AI detection light, search and destroy, and potentially SRCEO if you're feeling slightly braver. For the difficulty chasers, then you should try Know Your Enemy, Fatality, MLU and Skyrim Unleveled. Just be sure to check for patches with these picks. Finally, if you hate yourself just a little bit too much, well, for sadists like you, I advise going all in with Not Your Father's Skyrim version 2. On that though, I'm gonna call it. I really enjoyed playing around with different builds over my time playing Skyrim and would love to hear what your favourites are. If you need help building anything around these, then please don't hesitate to ask in the comments section or over on my Discord. As per usual, I have all of the links in the description below, but be sure to check for a pinned comment too, because that's where the Dark Souls load order is likely to be hanging out. We have been working super hard on the Discord server to get all the best out of this Dark Souls order, so do come over and lend us a hand. If this has been helpful, I would really appreciate those likes, comments, and of course subscriptions. Either way though, I hope you've enjoyed, and enjoy the rest of your day.